We often talk about the great pillars of Southern soul, the voices that defined a generation, like Aretha Franklin, the Queen herself, or the raw, undeniable power of Shirley Brown, whose music came deep from the heart of the Deep South. But what happens when a voice with that same depth, that same fiery potential, is silenced just as it's reaching for its crown? This is the untold tragedy of Jackie Neal, a name that should have stood alongside the legends of Southern soul, but instead became a painful echo in the music industry. She was the Baton Rouge, Louisiana native, born into music royalty, part of a family so gifted they were called the Jacksons of the soul blues category. Jackie had the style, the talent, and the momentum, blending R&B, pop, funk, blues, and Zydeco into a sound that was uniquely hers. She was ready to take her 25-seat tour bus across the sea for a European tour, ready to sign the major record deal that would finally cement her status. But a star on the rise makes some people feel threatened, and the deep, consuming jealousy of one man had already been planning her final curtain call for days. We must ask ourselves, what is the true cost when domestic violence steals a light that was meant to shine for the world? This is the story of Jackie Neal, the rise that was cut short, and the bitter betrayal of a talent that was simply too big to be contained. To understand the voice of Jackie Neal, you must first understand the soil from which it grew, the rich, complex, and often harsh landscape of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. She was born Marion Jackie Neal on July 7, 1967, the eighth of 10 children in a family that was already a dynasty of sound. Jackie was the baby girl of Shirley Neal and the legendary blues artist, Raful Neal. In the world of Southern music, the Neal family was akin to royalty, often whispered about as the Jacksons of the soul blues category. Their talent was undeniable, running deep in the bloodstream like the Mississippi River through the state. At the head of this musical lineage was her father, Raful Neal, a man so proficient on the harmonica that musicians and fans alike started calling him the Little Walter of Louisiana. For those who know the history of chess records and the Chicago blues sound, this was the highest praise imaginable. Raful Neal built his reputation playing with giants like Buddy Guy, Slim Harpo, and the original Little Walter himself, the very harmonica legend portrayed in the movie Cadillac Records. Growing up in the midst of this powerhouse, Jackie's childhood was steeped in the electric energy of the blues. She was a self-confessed tomboy, preferring the company of her brothers, who were all deeply involved in music, fostering a fierce spirit and a grounded perspective that would later define her stage presence. From the age of 5, she was singing, but her true idol, the star whose raw, untamed energy inspired her most, was Tina Turner. This influence would later manifest in Jackie's own musical versatility, a style she would forge by combining R&B, soul, pop, funk, blues, and the indigenous sound of her home, Zydeco. For those unfamiliar with the cultural heartbeat of Louisiana, understanding Zydeco is key to appreciating Jackie's artistry. This was the indigenous musical genre of southwest Louisiana's Black Creoles, people whose heritage was a blend of African, Afro-Caribbean, Native American, and European roots. While Cajun music was often associated with white culture in the region, Zydeco was undeniably the sound of the black community, rich with accordions, horns, guitars, and a powerful rhythm section. By the time Jackie Neal reached high school, she was already a local standout, not just for her voice but for her stage presence, leading the majorette squad. Although she was also skilled as a hairdresser and even became the proud owner of her own Jazzy Jackie's beauty salon, the call of the stage, the family business, was too strong to ignore. She began singing professionally around the age of 24. Her journey started with her first album, The Blues Won't Let You Go, released in 1995 on City Tracks Records. After a break of about 5 years, a time where perhaps she was tending to personal life or raising her 3 sons, she returned with renewed purpose. The new millennium marked her definitive turn toward stardom. She signed with Backstreet Records and released her second album, Looking for a Sweet Thing, in 2000. This album gave her fan base the hits that first introduced her to the wider Southern soul circuit, songs that gained notoriety like Nookie Thing and Right Thing Wrong Man. It was a sound that critics and audiences adored, further cemented by her third album, Money Can't Buy Me Love, in 2002, which featured the fan-favorite track, In Love With Your Stuff. Her influence stretched beyond the blues faithful. Even contemporary artists like the rapper Lil Boosie, a native of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, grew up on her sound, proudly showcasing her music on social media years later. This local pride speaks volumes about how deeply Jackie Neal's music resonated in her community. As her buzz grew, so did her professional aspirations. She was no longer just a local talent, she was a rising star with ambition. In a symbolic act of taking control of her career, Jackie Neal purchased a 25-seat tour bus, ready to carry her music far beyond Baton Rouge, Louisiana's city limits. She had her name, Miss Jackie Neal, boldly lettered on the side, a moving testament to the success she had earned and the path she was determined to follow. This rolling advertisement for her dream was the physical embodiment of a talent preparing to explode onto the world stage. This was the backdrop of soaring success, but it was also the moment a shadow began to creep into the picture, a quiet darkness born of passion that would eventually consume everything the light touched. The new century was undeniably the era of Jackie Neal. With the release of her fourth album in 2005, Down in the Club, she solidified her standing as a genuine star, a powerhouse voice for the modern Southern soul landscape. The single, The Way We Roll, was not just a hit, it was an anthem, a deeply personal track where she sang about her life and her family, bringing her audience intimately into her world. This connection to her roots in Baton Rouge, Louisiana was further cemented by the collaboration of her nephew, Tyree Neal, who both rapped on the track and contributed significantly to the writing of the album, reinforcing the idea that the Neal family legacy was continuing its strong, rhythmic march. Jackie Neal's success was built on authenticity. Her songs, particularly another standout from that album, He Don't Love Me, spoke candidly about the difficult realities of relationships, offering a deep, resonant honesty that her fans instantly recognized. Her buzz wasn't manufactured, it was organic. Radio stations across the South began playing her records heavily, and she moved from being a local favorite to a rising star on the wider Southern soul circuit. She was, by all accounts, a figure of pride in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, a homegrown talent achieving national recognition. Beyond the microphone, she was a symbol of independence and control. She wasn't just an artist, she was an entrepreneur. The fact that she was the proud owner of her own Jazzy Jackie's beauty salon speaks to a woman who had her feet firmly planted on the ground, even while her voice soared. The most striking symbol of her ambition, however, was her purchase of the 25-seat tour bus, emblazoned with her name, Miss Jackie Neal, a declaration of her intent to conquer the road and the industry. This bus was less a vehicle and more a promise of the heights she was ready to reach. Her career was at a breathtaking peak. The plans were concrete. A coveted European tour was lined up with her band, and she was actively pursuing a deal with a major record label, a definitive step that would catapult her from the independent soul blues scene into the mainstream. The future was wide open, paved with accolades and international recognition. It was against this backdrop of vibrant success that the seeds of tragedy were sown. Her connection with James White, a man she had met at one of her shows in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, began sweetly. He pursued her relentlessly, sending flowers and demonstrating a charming persistence that eventually won her over. But that charm masked a deep, consuming insecurity. Jackie Neal, in her faith and commitment to her work, had allowed James White to drive her tour bus, integrating him into the very symbol of her professional success. This privilege, however, was revoked due to his escalating jealousy. James White could not handle the attention her fans gave her, and the light that shone on Jackie Neal only cast a shadow of resentment on him. This toxic dynamic was a stark contrast to the strength and resilience Jackie Neal had inherited from her family. Her father, Raful Neal, the stalwart Southern soul figure, had provided a foundation of musical excellence, but the family was no stranger to hardship. Just months before, in the span of 11 months, they had already endured unspeakable losses. Her brother Ronnie Neal had passed from liver issues, and then her legendary father, Raful Neal, died from bone cancer, which had tragically been misdiagnosed as arthritis for too long. It was a time of immense vulnerability and grief for the Neal family, and yet Jackie Neal was powering through, using her success as a beacon of hope amid the storm. Her decision to end the relationship with James White 3 months prior to the final tragedy was an act of self-preservation, a clear statement that she was prioritizing her career, her peace, and her future over his destructive jealousy. She was ready to leave the personal drama behind and drive her bus toward Europe and that major label deal. But as the road got clearer for her, the path for James White became darker, culminating in a frightening campaign of harassment and threats that would soon explode into violence. The greatest tragedy in the life of Jackie Neal was not a career misstep or a failed album, but the insidious, consuming jealousy of a man who could not reconcile her soaring success with his own insecurity. After Jackie Neal made the brave and necessary decision to end the relationship with James White 3 months prior, he refused to let her go. He stalked her, even as he was reportedly seeing someone else, and he consistently threatened to end her life. The darkness was closing in. In the week leading up to the final, horrifying act, James White made his intentions terrifyingly clear. He viciously vandalized her property, smashing all the windows of her car. He was not a man seeking reconciliation, he was a man consumed by the need for control, and when he lost it, he decided her life, and his own, would be forfeit. The source confirms he spent 2 days actively plotting her murder. This personal turmoil for Jackie Neal was set against a backdrop of profound, collective grief for the entire Neal family. In a devastating period of just 11 months, the family of Southern soul royalty suffered an unbelievable string of losses. First, her brother Ronnie Neal passed away due to liver problems. Then, tragedy struck the heart of the dynasty when their patriarch, the legendary Raful Neal, died from bone cancer, which had been cruelly misdiagnosed as arthritis for the longest time. For Jackie Neal, this series of personal and professional earthquakes only fueled her ambition to honor their legacy and claim her space in the industry. Her upcoming European tour was more than just a gig, it was a tribute, a breakthrough, and a defiant step forward for her family's name in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. March 10, 2005, started like any other day in the life of a working artist on the brink of fame. Jackie Neal had a show scheduled in Mobile, Alabama, that night, and she was doing the final preparations. She went to a beauty salon, possibly her own Jazzy Jackie's beauty salon, to get her hair and manicure done. The very symbol of her hope, her large, 25-seat tour bus, proudly bearing her name, was parked right outside the shop, ready to hit the road. The salon was filled with customers and friends, a vibrant, everyday scene in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. At approximately 6 p.m., the fragile peace was broken. James White, having spotted her bus, walked into the salon. The conversation was strangely quiet, even calm. He spoke to her, and then, without incident, he left. This brief silence was not peace, it was the final, agonizing lull before the storm. 10 minutes later, the air fractured. James White returned, but this time he was not carrying flowers or apologies, he carried a gun. His rage focused immediately on the source of his pain, the news that Jackie Neal had moved on and had a new boyfriend at her house. His words were chilling, him and her was gonna die together. The confrontation was swift and terrifying. Jackie Neal, facing the man she once loved, pleaded for her life, attempting to talk him down. But reason had fled. James White fired a warning shot into the air, sending everyone in the salon rushing frantically for the front door. In the chaos, he shot one customer, Angela Myers, who, by God's grace, survived. The high point of her career was now the site of her final, desperate struggle. The chaos inside the beauty salon in Baton Rouge, Louisiana subsided, leaving a silence far heavier than any sound. In the immediate aftermath of the shooting, only Jackie Neal and her assailant remained. With the world outside rushing to understand the sudden sound of gunfire, the rising star of Southern soul was brutally taken. Despite her desperate pleas for life, James White shot her 3 times, aiming for her chest and abdomen. She died from a massive internal hemorrhage. In a final, grim act of selfish violence, James White lay down on her body and turned the gun on himself, firing a shot into his own chest. But fate, in its cruelest irony, allowed the killer to survive. He was arrested at the scene, charged with first-degree murder for the death of Jackie Neal, and attempted murder for shooting the customer, Angela Myers. The news of the slaying of Jackie Neal sent shockwaves through the Southern soul community. It was a vicious, sickening culmination of domestic violence and toxic jealousy, an all too familiar tragedy that hits close to home for many families across America. A voice of passion and truth, rooted in the legacy of Raful Neal and the vibrant culture of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, was extinguished not by disease or time, but by a controlling man who prioritized his ownership over her existence. Initially, James White planned to fight the charges, rejecting a plea deal of life in prison plus 50 years, fearing execution if he lost. This attempt to prolong the trauma and avoid responsibility only compounded the pain for the Neal family. Eventually, consumed by his regret and fear of the death penalty, he accepted the plea deal, sentenced to life plus 50 years. Though his attorney claimed he woke up crying in his jail cell every day, the damage was irreversible. The sudden, brutal loss of Jackie Neal was the final, devastating blow in an already catastrophic period for the family. They had endured 3 profound losses in less than a year, a testament to the heavy cost that can accompany a life immersed in the intense realities of the South. The music world was left mourning a talent who had promised so much, a star whose light was snuffed out just as she was preparing to shine the brightest. The funeral for Jackie Neal was a devastating testament to the light that was lost. Over 7,500 people showed up to say goodbye to the Southern Soul star. The sheer volume of people who arrived to pay their respects was staggering, a heartbreaking display of love that led her brother, Kenny Neal, to express a profound regret, that they wished this outpouring of support had come when she was still alive to feel it. This sentiment speaks volumes about the challenges faced by independent artists, even those as gifted and influential as Jackie Neal. Her passing, just 4 months after the death of her father, Raful Neal, meant the Baton Rouge, Louisiana music community lost two of its most profound voices in rapid succession. Yet, even in the darkness, the legacy of Jackie Neal endures, carried forward by her 3 sons and the talented Neal family, including her brother Kenny Neal and nephew Tyree Neal. They continue to create music, ensuring that the soul blues dynasty established by Raful Neal lives on. The story of Jackie Neal is a tragic reminder that the greatest threats often come not from the outside world, but from the toxic intimacy of a broken relationship. Her brutal murder at the hands of James White underscores the devastating consequences of unchecked jealousy and domestic violence, stealing a talent that was prepared to bless the global stage. Some stories end without closure, but her dignity, her passion, and the rhythm she brought to Southern soul need no applause to be validated. To anyone who has ever stood alone, attempting to move forward from a situation that threatens to pull you backward, know that we see you. Jackie Neal fought for her freedom and her career until her very last breath. Her albums, especially Down in the Club, and the music of the entire Neal family, from the harmonica mastery of Raful Neal to the continued work of Kenny Neal, are the final, powerful chapters of her story. We encourage you to listen to her songs, especially, He Don't Love Me, and truly hear the voice that was speaking the truth about her life. If this story reminds you of someone, or if you know the incredible depth of Southern soul, share your thoughts below. We read every comment. Rest in power, the unforgettable queen of Southern soul, Jackie Neal.